So you can zoom in and out. And if you need to refocus, sometimes you can hold this down part way.
Okay.
You can also take pictures in the middle of it.
It has little octopus legs.
Let's take a picture of Luke's head.
Wait, it's doing. Oh, but I don't think that's a very good picture. No.
Can you see me?
Nope. Yeah, now. Yeah.
Hello.
Yeah.
We can't talk about our secrets right now.
Hello.
Yeah, because then everyone on the camera will
Are we doing Australia?
Time to begin. So, last class, 5-6, I went in what I decided later on was a bad order. So we're gonna go in the right order.
What the heck is this?
Flip back to the generic continent.
I love the generic
continent.
Wait, I lost my blue.
It's Steve is Mako Island. Connor.
We're going to be adding 2 features to this today, and there's just going to be one thing left to do next class. So far we've got the pressure belts, the prevailing winds, the warm and cold ocean currents, the year-round major rainforest, the year-round major deserts, and that's it. We're going to be adding in the coastal wet areas and the rain shadow effect. First it'll be the coastal wet. Now, when I lived in Seattle, I was telling you that it was a rainy place for a couple of reasons. One of the reasons is that we had wind coming off the ocean right up into Seattle. So it had a lot of moisture. It might have not been cold water there, but still water coming off the ocean is going to be, or air coming off the ocean is going to be wet. Water coming off the ocean is wet too. So places on this map where you have wind coming from the ocean hitting the land are going to be wet. I'm going to move my pen around. Tell me when I get to one of these places. I'm going to start where it's not wet, and you tell me when I get there. So, right, I'm going to start here.
Can't see it.
I can't see.
Starting there, and there's no wind here, so you can't have wind coming from the ocean. And I'm going to move my pencil around here. Tell me when I have wind coming from the ocean.
Not wet.
No, this is the wind. It's coming off the land into the ocean. This is the ocean over here. This is the land over there. So not there. Tell me when I get to a place where wind is coming.
Now.
No.
No.
It's right there.
This is water. These are ocean currents. The wind is coming like this, all through this area. If you're standing here, the wind's coming from here. So tell me when I get there. Tell me when I get to where the wind.
There.
No, not there yet.
There.
There.
Yeah.
All along here. This
God,
this area. This is where the wind is coming from the ocean. Notice that I taper this wet area off as I get closer to the desert, and there are 2 reasons for that. One, there's no wind here. There's wind there. That's kind of unrealistic. There's generally not much wind here. There's generally a lot more here. As you go from here down, 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 the wind starts to pick up, but probably doesn't really get going until about right here. So this wet area that's wet because you've got wind coming off the oceans, it's going to get skinnier toward the desert. Having a big giant wet area touching a desert doesn't make any sense. So this wet area should taper off and not quite touch the desert. And you wouldn't extend over here because by the time you get to that area, it's wind just coming across the land right here. It's not picking, it's already dropped whatever extra moisture it had. And over here, it's not there because the wind is coming off the land. So now tell me when I get to the next place. I'm going to continue up this coastline.
Wait, where it's green?
Where you have wind, winds are the penciled arrows coming from the ocean hitting the land. So tell me when I get to that. I'm glad nobody said here. The wind is coming this way. It's coming from the land to the ocean. Tell me when I get to
Here.
No, why can't it be here?
Because there's no wind.
No wind. There's just what's the air doing?
Dead.
It's the doldrums.
It's just chilling.
Rising. This is low pressure. This is the doldrums. This is the hot, humid rising air.
Yeah.
Tell me when I get to a place where there's wind from the ocean.
I think I see it. I think I see it.
Thank you.
Yeah. This corner is wet.
Are we in Africa right now?
We are in Spamia. It looks like a big, I don't know.
Land.
When I see a loaf-shaped continent, it kind of reminds me of Spam and other loaf-shaped.
Wait, where is this in the packet? It's the.
It's the first continent. It's page 4. They're numbered on the top right.
Oh, on the side of Africa.
Now, tell me when I get to the next spot where that's going to be coastal wet.
There.
Right here.
There.
Oh.
And here,
Right
guess where this wet area is bigger? Close to the desert or by the rainforest?
Rainforest. Yeah, the
I thought it was a trick question. I didn't think I was saying it out loud.
No, it wasn't a trick question. It was an easy one. And there's one other place. At what latitude along this continent is the next place where that has wet from coastal breezes?
15. 10.
Oh, at the other end of the land.
The other end is right here, this area. So it's
Like that.
gonna be like that. And at some point, someplace, I'm gonna label this. I think I'll label it right here. This is coastal wet. And due to breeze from ocean. Now, if you haven't noticed this already, if you flip through this packet, there's a page where all these climate features are explained. I typed that out years and years ago before I really knew much. So if you find mistakes in there, I'll correct those. Just let me know.
Stop it. I'm gonna kill me.
So that's all we're going to do for now. Now these mountains are there for a reason, but we're not going to deal with those mountains yet. So having done those coastal breezes, flip to the map of Africa that we did last class and see if you can add in. Actually, the first thing to add in is the major rainforest and major desert. And based on how well people did on this last time, I think for this one, we should still kind of do it together. If you're real confident in yourself, you can tune me out and go ahead and do it, but not many people are there yet. The nice thing
We didn't do the rain.
about deserts and rainforests and winds and pressure belts is they're pretty much independent of the shape of the continent. If you didn't even have the continent here, you could always draw all the winds and all the pressure belts. The shape of the continent, that determines these ocean currents. The ocean currents are tricky. Those are probably the trickiest thing of all here. The deserts and rainforests, once you have the pressure belts, you can pretty much put those in without thinking about the continent at all. So tell me where the major rainforest goes here. Low pressure. This is rising air. Rising air is wet. Low pressure, it goes in the doldrums. Now, which side of this continent is going to have a bigger rainforest according to what I've told you?
The right side.
Think of this as a bathroom and another bathroom. Here somebody's taking a hot bath. Here they're taking a
Oh,
colder
I thought you were going to
bath.
say something.
Hot steamy.
Somebody's taking a hot, steamy bath. And here they're taking a cold bath. So
Right side.
this side, according to what I've told you, should be a little wetter, so the rainforest should be bigger on the east side, smaller on the west. Now, Africa generally is going to follow these rules that I'm telling you, but not exactly, because we're going to be treating Africa as a continent. Sorry, as an island. We're treating it as an island, and there's no Asia, there's no Europe. We're just imagining it's all by itself out in the middle of the ocean. And if it were, it would be more like what we're going to draw. In reality, it's a little different, and it's because of Asia and Europe. So where does the desert go?
In high area.
In the high pressure. So you're going to have one desert here. Which side of this desert is going to be bigger? The west side or the east side?
Left.
The cold bathroom side is going to be bigger desert. The hot, steamy bathroom side, that's going to be smaller desert. And remember with deserts, they should not quite touch the hot, steamy side. Oh no. My colored pencil lead broke. I'm going to have to switch out my colored pencil. Thank you. So that's the desert down here. Turn that off. What is that? And then the other desert's up here. Which side of this desert's bigger? The hot, steamy side or the cold, not so steamy side? Which side is going to make a bigger desert? The cold, not so steamy side, and the desert should not quite touch the hot side. Yeah.
So there's only 2 areas where...
And while we're here, see if you can do this. See if you can add in all the coastal wet areas. The places that are wet because of the ocean breezes. And then we'll look at the real Africa and see how close this is to it. I'm going to go. There should be 1, 2, 2 good ones and 2 questionable ones for coastal wet.
I think there's one right here. Oh, wait.
Oh,
Wouldn't there be some right here?
Okay, wait.
Do this.
Guys, wouldn't there be some?
Really? You guys are.
Guys, there'd be some right here, right?
So right here.
Can I try? Would it be closer to the?
It'd be like this.
The
Would it
areas
be?
that are wet because
It'd be
of the
closer to
wind.
the border, not the inland.
And right here. You
didn't hear me say it because you were playing with your live piece of paper.
Yes, the same like this. Bleed.
that's so good.
Bleed.
I like a person who messes up.
I feel like there'd be one right
That's great.
There's 2 good ones and 2 questionable ones. So these are the 2 good ones, I'm assuming.
and then the questionable one would be right here.
Yeah.
Oh no, it's coming from the land.
Okay, time to reveal the answers.
Wait,
Oh,
no.
what do I do with my green? There it is.
Oh, like right here.
So here are the good ones. The places
No,
that
wait.
are incontrovertible, definitely. This is going to be wet all along here because the wind, this is the wind, that's not the wind, this is the wind. It's coming from the east, it's going to come off of this water, it's going to hit the continent, that's going to make that wet. It's big on the rainforest side, it tapers off close to the horse latitudes because there's no wind down here. The other place that's definitely going to be wet is this whole area right in here because of the wind coming from the east. Now the ones that are kind of questionable, maybe this tip is going to be wet,
I actually have it.
just that tip, and I don't know, maybe right here. But this wind is really not going to have much to catch up there, so that's about it. Now, in reality, I'm going to show you the real Africa from the satellite view in just a second. Looking at this, can you tell me a few things? There are 2 things that are really the most wrong about
It's
this.
probably not going to be a straight line.
What's
Isn't that like the one desert in the north? Isn't that like a lot bigger?
Yes. So in reality, the Sahara Desert goes all the way across. And one of the reasons for that is instead of having a nice warm current right here going along the side of the continent and cold water here, there's actually Asia over here, which doesn't provide nearly as much moisture as this warm current can provide. In fact, Asia's got the monsoon effect. You have monsoons in India that can take and sort of steal a lot of moisture from Africa. And then there's also Europe up there. So the fact that there's this big giant continent here, that makes this all drier. There's one other thing that's wrong with this. That's really wrong. It has to do with this rainforest.
It's smaller than
Too small.
Well, in reality, let me just show you the.
three-dimensional.
I'll show you the real one.
Really? Yes.
In reality, the rainforest is bigger on the west side and smaller on the east side.
Oh.
So again, this probably has to do with the fact that there's not as much warm water over here, not as much humidity because of those continent zones. But generally, you can see the trend. Which part of Africa is most like an island? Northern Africa or southern?
Southern.
Southern, this is a peninsula, sticks out into the ocean, and this pretty well follows the rules that we were drawing. If the Kalahari Desert is really dry on the west coast, this is where the colder water is, and you can see much greener over there, and it's in just about the right spot. So the more island-like these continents are, the more they really obey these rules. The center gets a little less. At least there is a rainforest here, like what we were drawing. And there is a desert right there, like what we were drawing. Those areas that are coastal wet, there's a little bit right here. And there's supposed to be coastal wet along here, but this is supposed to be humid air coming off of the ocean, but it's really dry air coming off of Asia. Oh, and that tip right there is wet. A little bit of green down there. So,
Very little difference.
what I would like you to do now,
It's drawing that.
I would like you to do Australia.
That was skill.
Now, before you get too into this, for the first two steps, forget Australia's there at all. Just forget about it. I want you to do the pressure belts. That's step number one, the high and low pressures. And the second is to do the winds. And to do those, you don't even need Australia in the picture. All you need is the lines of latitude. They determine the pressure belts and the winds. Australia's small. You're not going to have all the types of pressure belts shown on this map and all the winds shown on the maps. Only a little bit of the southern hemisphere from about 10 degrees south down to 45 degrees south. So do those two things, and after you've done the pressures and the winds, use those to do the currents. That's where you're going to run into trouble. And after you do the currents, do the major rainforest and or desert, whatever happens to be there. And after you do that, do the places that are coastal wet. If you need to look back at your other ones, you can do that. But we're just going to be practicing this process over and over with different continents until you could do this all on your own without having to look it up or get help from me. The hardest part is going to be the currents, but the currents aren't too bad for Australia. If you want help, I'll help you, but I'm not going to spend too much time at anybody's table because I'm going to go over it up here.
Yeah. No, you can't see it. Yeah, no, you can't see it.
Because it's high in the West Latitudes.
So 2030.
Where does that say coastal wet?
Coastal wet. Those are the places where you have wet due to the breezes coming off of the ocean.
No.
So if you get the winds wrong, then you're pretty much scared.
It's right. No, it's not.
What's that?
Yeah, it is.
So if you got two
No,
wrong,
not
one's
on
gonna
here.
be wrong.
If you get the winds wrong, then your currents are going to be wrong,
No, it's
and
because
your,
it's
and your coastal wet's going to be wrong.
That's the thing though.
Your winds are wrong. Do you want me to check your winds? Draw them and I'll tell you.
Wait, Hannah.
Yeah.
Do we put the pressure belts
They
in
go
between
from-
each 10?
Up to about 50.
What?
So like from 10 to 20, that would be high.
Do you have pressure belts?
I got that.
Wait, where are the goals? Oh, per latitude.
That's what I got, but I don't know.
Which hemisphere?
And you're supposed to go down.
Yeah.
I don't care.
5. What?
Why you're raising the curve now. Yeah, I'm reading that. It's perfect. Oh, no, look, the wind.
Oh no, I did have high. Good. High. Low.
Okay, so like, is that still videotaping?
Yeah.
Hello.
Hannah, this is what I have.
Hi.
This is what I have.
What's the difference?
Your low is down here. Your low is down here.
Isn't it? Well, no, because it's high in the horse latitudes, between 20 and 30.
No, it's high.
Okay.
Oh, between 20 and 30, that's what it is.
Can I have my paper back?
Yeah, I got it.
Where's the warmest one?
It's okay, Shanti. No, you're not.
Yes.
I am.
Don't even say that.
You're not.
And water that comes from the top and goes down, that's going to be warmer than water that comes from the
right?
You know what? I think that when you get to the ocean currents, you should stop. There might be. Is there anybody who got them and wants me to check them? Because a lot of people get into the ocean currents and they're losing.
They don't return.
I like to start at the middle.
No, I haven't answered any questions yet. Oh, watch what I'm doing. Don't do any more. It doesn't look like anybody's really totally grasping this at this point, and that's fine. Now, the first thing I want to say is that on every single map that you do, going back to this is what determines the high and low pressure belts. You're always going to have low pressure at the equator. You're always going to have high pressure at the horse latitudes, low pressure at about 60. And it's because of this pattern of rising and sinking air out in the atmosphere. And that gives you these wind patterns. They're totally independent of what kind of a continent you have. So between these lines of latitude, between 0 and 30, you're going to have winds like this. Between 30 and 60, you're going to have winds like that. So I say that just because I want you to know this isn't really hard or something you really have to think about every time. You just have to remember. You look at this map, here's 10 degrees, 20 degrees, 30 degrees. 0 degrees would be right here. 0 degrees is the equator. So that would be the hottest part on this map. As you get down here, northern Australia is pretty close to the equator. It's warmer, it's getting colder, colder. The southern tip of Australia is almost as far south as we are north. We're at about 45 degrees north latitude. There, it looks like maybe 42 degrees south latitude, so it's pretty cold there in Australia. All right, so the first thing to do is to realize between 20 and 30 degrees, you always have high pressure. This is the horse latitudes, where the horses were thrown overboard to try to help row the boats out of the horse latitudes where they had no wind. What is the air doing in the horse latitudes?
Not moving.
It is moving. High pressure.
It's
Coming down. It's sinking out of the sky. It's squeezing. So this is sinking air. This is dry sinking air. We're going to have a desert here, but I'm not to that yet. Now when this air comes down and hits the ground, it's going to go, is it going to go toward high pressure or away from it? Away. Things go from high to low. Don't draw what I'm going to draw. I'm just drawing arrows in these wind zones moving away from the high pressure. The arrows don't really go like that because there's the Coriolis effect. This is the southern hemisphere. Things curve counterclockwise in the southern hemisphere, so this wind is going to go away from the high pressure and it's going to turn counterclockwise, which means to our left. Now, in this area down here, south of the horse latitudes, the wind goes away from the horse latitudes, it goes south, and it curves counterclockwise again. So it's going to our right. So just at some point, you should have it memorized that between 20 and 30 degrees, there's high pressure. Winds go away from the high pressure, they curve counterclockwise in the southern hemisphere.
wait, where is there low pressure between 50 and 60?
There would be low pressure at, let me go back to this generic continent. There's low pressure between 5 degrees north and 5 degrees south. High pressure between 20 and 30, and there's low pressure centered on about 60.
Wait, so low pressure is centered on 0 and 60?
0 and 60. Neither of which shows up on this map. 0 is somewhere up there, 60 is somewhere down here. So these winds are blowing toward the low pressure, but we just can't see it. You don't really need to think of it that way, just think of them blowing away from the high pressure. Now, ocean currents. Where I've got my pen right, or my pencil, which way is that water going to move? Is it going to move to our left or to our right on the map? To our left. And look at where it's situated. Is it far from the equator or close to the equator? It's close. So what kind of temperature is this water going to have? It's going to be warm. So all this water moving along, I'm just going to draw red arrows moving in the same direction as the winds. The winds are going generally westward. And down in this area, now I'm getting farther from the equator. Which way is the water going to go there? Left or right? Right, and it's cold water because it's far from the equator. Now, that's not it. That's just sort of the general easy stuff to do. And this next part isn't really hard either. If you played in a bathtub, you know the answer to this question.
Oh, no, they
If you've never played, is it almost
3
done?
minutes.
3 minutes. Okay, that would be a good stopping point for the video. So
Right now.
when I don't take baths anymore. I take showers. But when I was a kid, my mom would make me take baths, and my bath water would start to get cold. So I turn on the hot water. I turn on the really hot water, and then my feet would get hot. So what do you do when your feet get hot? You go like this, and I would swirl the water around me and create this convection current, taking the heat from there and transferring it and mixing up the energy. So if you sat in this giant bathtub right here, and you swished backward on your left, and you swished forward on your right here where your toes are, which way is this water going to go? Is it going to go
right?
Is it going to go up or down? In this
Down.
No way.
I'm going.
That way.
It's gonna
Right here, it's
turn
going to go.
down.
No
It's
way.
gonna turn
You need to take baths.
It's gonna turn
Counterclockwise.
It's going to go counterclockwise. Yeah.
So I was right.
So there were so many people giving me opposite answers. What do I do with my pen? So this blue is going to hit right here, and some of it's going to go this way, and some of it is going to split and go up and mix in with that warm. And on this side, this red is going to go across here, but some of it's going to get sucked down, and it's going to get pushed out this way. I can't think of any exception to this rule. On just about any continent, you're going to have the East Coast is going to have warm water, West Coast is cold water. Think of this ocean as a big swirly thingy. And if you push, or a wheel, you push the top of the wheel to the left, the bottom of the wheel to the right, the wheel's got to go counterclockwise like this, the left side has to go down. If you have a wheel, swirly thing, it's a good name for a wheel. And if you have a wheel over here, you push the top to the left, bottom to the right, the wheel's going to spin counterclockwise and the right side's going to come up. So the ocean, I think they call these, the word is G-Y-R-E, and I've never been totally sure on the pronunciation.
Gyro.
I don't know if it's gyre or gyre or gyre,
Gyro.
whatever it is, but that's the word for these swirlies in the ocean. Now, continue Australia.
42,
See if you can draw the rest of the stuff.
39.